Any worry going on in the WNBA executive offices? If there is no worry, people aren't going to turn off. People are still
going.
The
nightmare scenario for the WNBA has officially arrived. The fallout from Caitlin Clark's leg injury is already turning ugly. Franchises that shifted their matchups to bigger arenas expecting her to fill the building are now staring down the possibility of rows and rows of empty seats. Some fans are threatening to walk away from the league entirely, while others are dumping their tickets and scrapping their travel plans altogether. So what's your take? Is it too much to ask fans to stick around and support the league while Clark is out, or is a boycott a fair response?
But we don't want this. What am I talking about? Indiana Fever ticket prices to games over the next 2 weeks have dropped 42%.
Honestly, the WNBA could not have picked a worse moment for this. And let's be blunt, they brought this on themselves. Caitlin Clark, the one player who has single-handedly kept television numbers up and seats filled, is now out with a leg injury. And the league, which has spent months trying to downplay just how much she matters, is about to find out exactly what happens when she's not on the floor.
I don't know when it happened. I know afterwards, we got a message that she had something going on with her leg, and they were getting an MRI, and then we got
Let's get into what's actually happening here. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White says Clark could be re-evaluated in a couple of weeks, but anyone who's dealt with this kind of injury knows that timeline is optimistic at best. If I had to bet, I'd put the real recovery window somewhere between 2 and 6 weeks. This isn't some small tweak she can play through, it's a genuine injury, and genuine injuries take real time to heal. Here's where it gets messy. Multiple franchises, along with the league itself, poured money into the assumption that Clark would be walking through the door. The Washington Mystics shifted their home game against Indiana to a 15,000-seat arena in Baltimore. The Chicago Sky moved their matchup to the United Center. Dallas relocated their game to the American Airlines Center, home of the Mavericks. None of these were small, casual decisions. We're talking about marketing budgets, added security, extra staffing, and venue rental costs, all of it riding on the drawing power of one athlete.
Yeah, I don't know how things work in pretend basketball. I don't know the history of transparency when it comes to timelines.
Now those same franchises could be looking at some of the worst attendance numbers they've had in years. And fans aren't being quiet about their reaction either. All over social media, people are saying they're unloading their tickets, canceling plans, or flat out refusing to watch until Clark is back on the court. One fan posted that they were reselling their Fever Mystics tickets because there was no way they were making the drive from DC to Baltimore to watch a game without Clark in it. Another said they'd only stream Fever games on a delay, specifically so the league wouldn't get credit for their live viewership. This isn't a handful of isolated complaints, it's a coordinated response from a fan base that feels its favorite player has been undervalued by the league. And let's be honest about what's really driving this anger. It's bigger than just the injury itself. It's about how the WNBA has handled Clark's entire time in the league. From day one there's been this strange tug-of-war, trying to profit off her popularity while simultaneously trying to make sure she doesn't get too much of the spotlight. Players and commentators kept circling back to the same conversation, how the attention should be spread around, how other players deserve recognition too. But here's the problem with that approach, you can't have it both ways. You can't build your entire marketing strategy around one person and then act surprised when her absence leaves a massive hole. When Clark is on the floor, the WNBA sees numbers it has never seen before. Broadcasts that used to pull in maybe 200,000 viewers were suddenly drawing well over 1 million. Arenas that historically struggled to sell 5,000 tickets were selling out 20,000-seat buildings. And yet, instead of embracing that reality, the league often seemed almost uncomfortable with how much Clark was driving the conversation. Rather than simply acknowledging that one player was responsible for the bulk of its growth, there was a constant push to reframe the story as being about everyone. Now they're about to find out, in very real terms, what their ratings and attendance actually look like without her. The injury itself raises some uncomfortable questions too. A lot of people are wondering whether Clark was brought back too quickly after dealing with a similar issue in the preseason. In a league with an already condensed schedule and increasingly physical play, protecting your most valuable player should be priority number one. Instead, the league now finds itself in a spot where its biggest revenue driver could be sidelined for a meaningful chunk of the season. From a purely business perspective, that's a disaster waiting to happen. The timing could not be crueler. The WNBA was finally building real momentum. Television deals were improving. Mainstream outlets were actually paying attention. Sponsors were lining up with real interest. And all of that momentum was built on Clark's crossover appeal, her ability to pull in casual viewers who otherwise wouldn't be tuning into women's basketball at all. Those casual fans don't have deep loyalty to specific teams or players outside of her. They're not going to sit down and watch a random matchup just because the basketball is good. One player pulled them into the league, and without that player, their interest disappears with her. This isn't a knock on the other talented players in the WNBA, it's simply how star power works in professional sports, full stop. And nowhere will that be more obvious than at the box office. Moving a game from a 7,000-seat venue to a 20,000-seat arena is a serious gamble, one made in the hope that demand would justify the move. These franchises weren't trying to break even, they were banking on high ticket prices and sellout crowds. Now they are bracing for the very real possibility of playing in front of a half-empty building. Combine that with the extra costs already sunk into these venue changes, and the optics alone are going to be brutal. Cameras panning over thousands of empty seats in arenas that were supposed to be packed will send an unmistakable message about the league's actual drawing power without Clark. And that's exactly the kind of image that sponsors and television executives pay close attention to, the kind of image that can shape future deals and partnerships for years to come. What makes this even more frustrating is that it's completely self-inflicted. The WNBA had a golden opportunity to ride Clark's success while lifting up its other stars at the same time. Instead, the league has often treated her impact as more of an inconvenience than an asset. There's been a strange reluctance to simply embrace everything she brings to the table. And this fan reaction? It's the predictable result of that approach. Don't be shocked when people turn their attention elsewhere after you've spent months insisting their favorite player isn't actually that special. The WNBA is about to learn a hard truth: loyalty runs both ways, and it shows up most clearly when your star is hurt. Some will say a boycott is an overreaction, that fans should keep supporting the league and its other players regardless. But that argument misses the point entirely. These fans didn't start out as WNBA supporters who happened to notice Clark along the way. They became Caitlin Clark fans who happened to watch the WNBA. That distinction matters. The league had a real chance to convert those Clark-specific fans into lifelong supporters of the WNBA as a whole. But that requires actual effort, a deliberate strategy to turn casual viewers into long-term fans. Instead, it seems like the assumption was that once people started watching, they'd automatically fall in love with everything else too. That's simply not how casual sports fandom works, especially for viewers who are new to the sport. And the financial fallout goes well beyond ticket sales and TV ratings. Merchandise sales will likely take a hit. Sponsorship activations get a lot harder to justify when your biggest draw isn't on the floor. Media coverage naturally dries up without her storylines to follow. Every part of the league's business model gets touched by these ripple effects. Here's the part that really stings: none of this had to happen. This entire situation could have been avoided with smarter load management, better injury prevention protocols, and maybe not rushing a player back from a previous leg issue in the first place. But the temptation to cash in on Clark's popularity may have led to decisions that prioritized short-term gain over long-term player health. The timing makes it all the more painful because this is happening at a pivotal moment in the league's growth. The WNBA was finally gaining real traction, but sustaining that requires consistency. You can't grow a casual audience if your biggest star keeps disappearing for extended stretches. And there's no guarantee those viewers come back once they leave, they'll simply find something else to watch. It'll be worth watching how the league responds to all of this. Will they finally acknowledge just how much Clark's presence affects their bottom line? Or will they keep pushing the narrative that no single player is essential to the WNBA's success? That argument is going to be a tough sell once the ratings and attendance numbers start rolling in over the next few weeks. There's a real irony here: the WNBA spent so much energy trying to prove it didn't need Clark to thrive. Now it's about to get the chance to prove exactly that, whether it wants to or not. And based on everything we've seen so far, all signs point to that experiment going poorly for them. This boycott movement isn't just about an injury. It's rooted in a broader feeling among fans that the league hasn't treated the player who brought them in with the respect she deserves. Mix that resentment with the reality that a huge chunk of the audience is tuning in for one specific player, and you get a perfect storm. Franchises that bet heavily on Clark's ability to sell tickets are about to feel the consequences of that gamble. Rescheduled games, inflated marketing budgets, and sky-high expectations were all built around her being on the court. Without her, all of that turns into an expensive lesson about the risks of hitching your entire strategy to a single player, especially when there's no real backup plan in place. The WNBA is about to get a crash course in star power economics. Without their biggest draw, they'll see exactly what their media coverage, attendance, and TV ratings look like on their own. And judging by the fan reaction so far, those numbers are not going to be pretty. This whole moment captures the tension that's followed women's basketball ever since Clark entered the league. Her injury is going to provide the clearest answer yet to the ongoing debate over individual star power versus overall league growth. The numbers don't lie, and over the next few weeks they're going to paint a very clear picture of who's actually driving interest in the WNBA. The league is about to get a painful reminder about the dangers of undervaluing the very thing that's been carrying it. Empty arenas and sagging ratings will send a loud, clear message about who really matters to the bottom line. There's also a longer-term question buried in all of this. What happens to the league's credibility with broadcast partners if this pattern repeats itself? Networks don't sign multi-year deals based on a single great season. They sign them based on projected, repeatable demand. If Clark's absence causes ratings to collapse this dramatically, executives are going to start building that risk into their calculations. That could mean smaller rights fees, fewer marquee time slots, and less willingness to bet big on the league's growth story going forward. In other words, the damage here might not be limited to a few weeks of bad optics. It could shape how the WNBA is valued in negotiations for years to come. Then there's the question of what this does to team-level business planning. Front offices that relocated games, expanded marketing budgets, and staffed up for larger crowds now have to explain those decisions to ownership groups if the numbers come in soft. That's not just an embarrassing headline, it's a real conversation about accountability, about who signed off on betting the house on one player's presence, and about whether those same franchises will be willing to take similar risks again. If teams become gun-shy about scheduling around star power, that has ripple effects on scheduling strategy across the entire league. It's also worth asking what this means for the players themselves. Clark isn't the only one dealing with a packed, physical schedule in a league that's still figuring out how to protect its talent as attention and revenue scale up rapidly. If the response to this injury is simply to rush her back the moment she's cleared, rather than genuinely prioritizing her long-term health, it sets a troubling precedent, not just for her, but for every player who becomes a franchise's primary economic engine. Load management conversations that are standard in other major sports leagues need to become standard here too, and this injury might be the moment that forces that conversation into the open. At the same time, it's fair to ask what the rest of the league does in response to this moment. Do other teams and players use this window to make their own case for why fans should stick around regardless of who's on the floor? There's an opportunity here, buried under all the bad news, for someone else to step up, put together a highlight-worthy stretch of games, and give casual fans a reason to stay engaged. Whether that actually happens is another matter, but the door is technically open. None of this changes the core problem, though. The WNBA built its recent surge in popularity on the back of one player's crossover appeal, and it never fully committed to converting that borrowed attention into something more durable. Now, with that player sidelined, the league is being forced to answer a question it spent months trying to avoid. How much of this growth was really about the WNBA as a whole, and how much of it was about Caitlin Clark specifically? The next few weeks of empty seats, soft ratings, and social media chatter are going to answer that question whether the league is ready to hear it or not. So, how do you see this playing out? Drop your take in the comments below. And if you want more no-nonsense sports commentary like this, smash that like button and subscribe.